The drive home was a haze of headlights and horns and a steady drizzle that blurred my view of the road. I didn't turn on the wipers. I hadn't tried to clean up the vomit. My body was hurtling forwards towards home, but my mind was still on the mountain. Had I just killed someone? No. It was too surreal. That was a dream. The smell of fermenting bile stung my nose as I pulled into the parking lot, but the sideways glances from neighbors passing through the apartment lobby couldn't stir me from my fog. I reasoned a shower may help. It could be cleansing or soothing or some other bullshit word I knew held no meaning anymore. But the tepid water, dripping like runoff down my back, did nothing more than serve as a personal waterfall, a solitary place where unwelcome thoughts spewed out like so much more hot puke. I lathered up my hands for what must have been 20 minutes before realizing what I was doing. I attacked my arms first. They had no blood on them, but had it ever been there? I scrubbed until the skin turned red, and then I attacked my face. I think I was crying, but it was hard to tell. Emotions rose and fell like rough tides, but I couldn't pinpoint exact feeling. There was a small happiness that nagged to get out, and I didn't know where it came from or why it was there, and it disturbed me. It made me scrub harder, clawing at my face until a rogue finger scraped my nose, and the water dripped red. This scrubbing and thinking and worrying and bleeding continued for some time. And then, a bang. At the bathroom door. It was a knock. More like a large, heavy object slamming into the wood and rattling it. I couldn't hear the shower, and my temples throbbed, almost convincing me the banging was just my pulse. But then, footsteps. On the hardwood beyond the door. Scuttling footsteps. Like a dog with unclipped nails, sliding and clicking down the hall and stopping. They hadn't headed towards the front door. There was nothing but a windowless room that way. I stood still, naked and vulnerable and soaking. I had tunnel vision or vertigo or nausea or a migraine all of a sudden, and I refused to leave that spot, curling into a ball in the tub. Minutes or hours passed in silence, save for the static of the rushing water, and I felt that I had to move. My options were remain in the shower forever or go face whatever stalked the hallway. Still naked, I jumped from the tub, slipping and catching a foot on the loop before flopping forward and bashing my face into the counter. Dazed and bleeding, I turned the lock, turned the knob, and flung the bathroom door open, trying to be intimidating. I can't imagine I succeeded. I was a naked, thin man, dripping with his own blood, limping into the hallway. The hallway light was on, and the bedroom, and the back room, and the kitchen. Every single light in the apartment had been turned on, but not by me. I limped towards the windowless room, unprepared for the intruder within. And there he was, David Thredson, the man who nearly broke my wrist at lunch, crouched and rocking himself in the middle of the carpet, dressed all in white. David? What are you doing? He raised a hand toward me. A hand wrapped around a small revolver. Take me! His eyes were desperate and crazed and full of sadness. Take me home, Mr. Black. David, I don't understand. I was cursing myself for not grabbing my phone. I went to my father's house again. Broke in. He looked down, talking so low he might as well have been speaking to himself. Do you know what I found? Of course you don't know, but I know. I saw them. David? What I thought was gentle came out shaky and frightened. I stepped forward towards the trembling gun, still aimed at me. David continued as if I had simply left the room. Papers. Symbols. I don't know what it all was. I had never been in the attic. Forbidden. Never. Not allowed. Just put down the gun, and we'll talk about this. The Pale Horse isn't death. He choked on the words and turned the gun to his head.
Will you save my soul?
I don't know. David looked up again, but this time his eyes were as dull as his voice had become. If you don't know. He cocked the gun. Then I belong to them. No! David! Wait! I hit the floor. It was instinct. My ears were ringing. Blood splattered the white shirt and the gray carpet as David crumpled. I didn't have time to gather myself. I heard a whirring sound. The sound of a projector from the living room. There were whispers as well, in different voices. Some were male, and some were female. Some sounded like snakes, and others bristled the hair on my neck and sent a shockwave down my spine. Have you seen how will he take you? Have you felt how will we find you?
Have you seen
How will we find you? The same whispering tones repeated the same phrases as I dragged my feet down the hall. In the corner of the living room was the source. It was a projector, all set up for a show, turning the opposite wall into a movie screen. I was watching the Pale Horse with all its awkward, spastic movements in the night vision forest. But this wasn't my dream. The monster's hands were outstretched, and in the bony palms was a small flame, lapping up the surrounding dark. Behind the horse was what I recognized as my own car, mangled and looking pathetic. almost like the broken machine was cowering.
Come to me, Garrett. I am beyond death and beyond death.
Something snapped, and the lights flipped on in my head. I charged the projector, kicking it over with my bare foot. Pain shot white and sharp up my leg, but the film reel fell off the machine, unspooling on the floor. The metal film casing had a phrase written in black marker.
To the fool who went looking for death.
It didn't feel like my own thoughts swimming in my head, but a soothing, familiar voice, too deep to be my own internal one, snorted a laugh only I could hear, and grunted a response.
Mocked the beast who will find it. Embrace me. I am your solace.
The pale horse looked like I was viewing it through water. I wasn't watching a screen anymore. I was in the forest. My car was aflame in a white fire, and even from yards away, the heat felt like it was searing my skin, melting my flesh to my bones.
You can't escape from us. From me. From life's plan.
What are you? I could barely hear myself. A mouse in a crowded cathedral. The other voice growled unintelligible things in my head.
I am the end, Garrett. I am the shepherd, here to guide. The boatman who rows across the river. Will you be my passenger?
There was a roar only I could hear, and then my tongue belonged to another.
No!
The word was thunder, but it felt and tasted like tar. The pale horse took a step backwards and paused before returning to its imposing form. The fire in the thing's hands licked and danced up the robed arms, casting murky shadows over the horse skull of a head, giving it a leering smile.
That you should get out of the road.
Shrieking, white crows and vultures descended from nowhere. Needle-like beaks and claws ripped holes in me, dragging out my intestines onto the pavement. I screamed until I tasted blood, then screamed out whispers until the growling voice spoke, and everything went gray.
Is that all?
When I came to, the projector was gone, but the film lay uncoiled on the floor beside me. My neck ached from where it must have hit the metal casing. There was a pressure against my hip, and I looked down to find the source. My hand felt cool metal, and sure enough, there was David's revolver, shining confidently in the dim light of a failing living room bulb. How the fuck? David was dead in my house. I jumped up. Regret followed. Fresh cuts and bruises introduced themselves like knives and hammers. Then, itching. I couldn't stop itching. But every time I scratched, I remembered a beak or a talon digging, dragging, tearing off chunks. I remembered being emptied of organs and blood and hope. I remembered choking on that blood. I remembered it all. But there was a dead body in the back room, and I kept that memory at the forefront of my thoughts and screaming, blinking neon as I stumbled down the hallway, steadying my still naked body against the wall. I was carrying the gun. It just felt like the right thing to do. All this talk of death made me long for one of its instruments. David's body hadn't been disturbed, and his blood had long since stopped leaking out onto the carpet, now stained in a heavy maroon. The whole room smelled so metallic, I could taste it. I grabbed the body by the hair and began to pull, making it to the middle of the hallway before collapsing in exhaustion. I felt sleep tugging at my mind, fuzzy and comforting, but I hoped I wouldn't dream. Tomorrow, I'll go take inventory of the Thredson house. The pale horse was gone. I was alone in the forest, but I could hear breathing everywhere around me. There was a lot of something in that place, and all those somethings were watching me. I walked the road for hours, but the scenery never changed. The trees in the distance never came closer. I tried to will myself to wake up, but it did nothing. The breathing was getting louder. I had been holding the gun this whole time. It only seemed right. The barrel hurt, pressed so hard against my head. My fingers slipped on the trigger. It was the only way out. Like a pinprick. I squinted in the light of the sun-soaked hallway. The new headache did nothing to deter me from standing up once again. So I grabbed the corpse and continued to drag